أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وإن تؤمنوا وتتقوا يؤتكم أجوركم ولا يسألكم أموالكم إن يسألكموها فيحفكم تبخلوا ويخرج أضغانكم ها أنتم هؤلاء تدعون لتنفقوا في سبيل الله فمنكم من يبخل ومن يبخل فإنما يبخل عن نفسه والله الغني وأنتم الفقراء وإن تتولوا يستبدل قوما غيركم ثم لا يكونوا أمثالكم صدق الله العظيم. A basic translation of this ayat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in His glorious Quran, the life of this world is but a play and a passing delight. But if you believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you are conscious of Him, He will give you recompenses. And withal, He does not demand of you to sacrifice everything that you have. If He was to demand to you to sacrifice everything you have, He will urge you and you would niggardly cling onto them. And so, He would bring out your moral failings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentions in the Quran, He says, behold, O believers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is you who are called upon to spend freely in God's case. But among you are such as to turn out to be niggardly. And yet, he who acts niggardly in Allah's cause is only niggardly towards his own self. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indeed self-sufficient. Sadaqallahu al-Azim.
Now tonight we're here and you'll be hearing the story of a remarkable man, an astonishing and outstanding person in the conventional world as well as the spiritual world. And he is no other than Sheikh Abdullah Quliam. Sheikh Abdullah Quliam became Muslim at the age of 31 after qualifying as a solicitor. He was a very successful solicitor, and with a bit of an illness, he went to his doctors who suggested go to a hotter country, went to the south of France, and then somehow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided him to go to Morocco. After spending some time in Morocco, he studied Islam quite a bit, and then he decided he wants to embrace the faith. So he became Muslim in 1887. Brothers and sisters, it was like 130 years ago. And 2 years later, he actually started the very first mosque in 25th of December 1889. Was a remarkable man at that time, and he was the person who had brought Islam into the Western world here, and in particular the Great Britain that we are all living in. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Khan is going to tell you more about the journey of Abdullah Quliam, and of course we have two distinguished speakers, three of them in fact, who will tell you more about it. Now, look at how it works. He was born in 1856, that's the 19th century. He died in the 20th century, 1932. And here we are in the 21st century, have reopened the masjid. The masjid was opened after over a century of closure. So we opened the mosque in June 2014 after 106 years of closure. See how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works in a miraculous and a mysterious way. And the building that he bought was, he bought 3 buildings together. In fact, there were 5, but he retained 3 of them. And when he vacated the building in 1908, it was bought by the city council, which then turned into birth, death and marriage registry. And the very mosque that he built at the back of it, which became the record room. It looks like a storeroom to you and me, but it became the record room, the safest room in the city. It had a concrete bunker, it had iron doors, everything closed. If there was a fire, if there was a bomb, that room would not get ruined. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected his house in a very mysterious way. Alhamdulillah. And you know, that storeroom could have been the toilet, the horse barn, or it could have been a warehouse, a wine store. But no, it meant to be the safest room in the city of Liverpool. So that's how it was. He was a remarkable man, and Mr. Khan will talk more about it. Since the opening, we have started a number of activities there. We have started the Arabic classes, which you've heard our Sheikh reading. I always say it's the youngest Imam for the oldest mosque, mashallah. And he's a Hafiz and he's very knowledgeable and he leads the Arabic classes. We also started the Hifz classes there. We have the ESOL class for sisters to learn English. We have men's classes. We have reverts. Every month they get together because Abdullah Kulliyam was a revert, and therefore we are encouraging and we are getting a lot of reverts, convert people coming to the mosque. We have over 10 people embrace Islam since then, and we have a couple of marriage ceremony taking place. Although we are not fully registered, but we do do the Islamic marriages. Now, what I would say is we have a future plan, which you will see, and we have done the accommodation on the top floor. We have done most of the work in the accommodation in the attic and the second floor. And the third floor will be used for conference facilities, dawah center, educational facilities. And the ground floor will have a cafe, will have a donation room, a donation wall room, where everybody who become a refounding member, and it's like a Bedouin room, where how the Arabs normally would sit. And then we have the ladies' facilities as well. So those are the things that are progressing very well. We've now embarked on the Urdu area, which you will see in a moment. It's the last phase of the project. What I would say is, you consider yourself being blessed that you are here. Not everybody, those who are not here, may not have been blessed to know the history of this project, be able to involve in this project, and it's not a simple history. It's a history. It's England's first mosque. And how many of us get the opportunity to, in this generation, to be able to rebuild, reestablish Allah's house after 130 years of closure? Think about it. This is the time to get involved. This is the time to contribute and also guide us to make this a center of excellence for Islamic studies. We have very innovative programs to do. We have a lot of classes that will go on. It will create a center of excellence for the Islamic knowledge as well as conventional ones too. So I'm not going to take much of your time, inshallah. All I would say is please get involved in this project. You're the luckiest one to be here to know about this project. And once this project is closed, maybe after another 6 months, we'll probably finish the total work of the building. And you may not get the opportunity in a lifetime to get involved in a prestigious project like this. I myself consider a very humble and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given me the privilege to serve England First Mosque. And you still have the opportunity to get involved tonight. So inshallah, without further ado, I'd like to say thank you so much for coming to tonight's event, and Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everybody. It's an honor and privilege to invite you all to this auspicious day. The Abdullah Kulliyam Mosque started in a very small way, in a very humble way, because it was almost lost in history. In 1999, a small group of Muslims led by Dr. Akbar Ali met and there were a number of converts who were involved in that stage as well, which led to formation of the idea that it is not a job that an individual can do. We need to have an organization to be able to take this history forward. And the Abdullah Williams Society was formed and registered as a charity. Since then, we have been struggling hard to acquire the building. It was quite a task because the building was at that time being used by the Liverpool City Council for the last 100 years or so for birth, death, wedding registry. So everybody born in that area in the last 100 years had a connection with that building. Fortunately for us, in 2000, the City Council decided that the building was redundant, and we had the opportunity to acquire the building. We didn't have any funds, only with the intention of reinstating England's first mosque. We advertised amongst ourselves, and we had a lot of support from the local community, which led to a campaign which ultimately sort of forced the City Council recognized the importance of it and decided to give it to us. And they were given on a special condition. They were not going to give us any money, but what they were going to do was offer us the option to acquire the freehold for £1 if we are able to come up with finances to develop it. Since then, we've been fundraising, and unfortunately, during that process, the building was vandalized. In those days, in 2005, 6, and 7, the price of lead and copper went very high, so thieves were all around the building. It was a vacant building at that time, so our building, as you can see from the pictures, the lead was taken, the Welsh slates were broken, copper pipes from inside the building were torn apart, and rain, as you know, been pouring into the building. It was a horrendous sort of, a few pounds worth of lead has cost us more than £200,000-300,000 in repair costs. We can see how the building looks. Our first stage of fundraising was trying to get a temporary roof done. As you can see, those blue sheets, they were put in. Some timber and dry rot repairs were done. Inside the building, there were moss growing all over. Timber had rotted away, dry rot, wet rot, rising damp. And to add compound to our problems, it was a listed building, which of course it should be because of its historic nature. So we were tasked with getting on. And it took us quite a long time. From 2008, we started fundraising, and finally we managed to open the mosque in 2014 in June, just before Ramadan and just before Dr. Ali was passing away. It was set up with a few ambitions, was to reinstate the mosque and establish a Dawah center. Also, it was thought important that Muslims ought to be reaching out to the communities, all other faith communities and non-faith communities. So these works have continued, and after opening, in the last 3-4 years, we've spent more than about £1 million really to refurbish the building to this stage. When we started in 2007, we had a quantity surveyor who gave us a budget of £3.5 million to develop the building. And to date, we have spent about £1.2 million pounds. Some of it is voluntary labor that many Muslims have contributed. And inshallah, with a little bit of help from all of us, we should be able to complete this project. In the process, we have made good relationship with other faith communities. The Bishop of Liverpool has become a patron of our mosque. And the building works that we do are of the highest standard, and thanks to some of our colleagues, friends, and trustees, we are trying to make the best use of this building, also keep its listed status. We are sort of reinstalling covings, decorative covings back. If you come and visit us, you will see what we are doing on the first floor, where it's going to be the education center, where we have a library, classrooms, and a media room. All I can do is invite you all to come and visit the center, see what we have done and how much you can help. This is an iconic project. It's a historic project for Muslims, and also non-Muslims, because we have had a few non-Muslim donors as well. The Lord Lieutenant, the Queen's representative in Liverpool, was one of the first donors. Lady Pilkington, the famous glassware manufacturer, she was a donor for this project. But they were all small donations. The majority of donations came from Muslim brothers and sisters from amongst us all. I think that's all I'd like to say at this point. Are you going to take over now?
Assalamu alaikum, bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Thank you very much for attending tonight. This is a historic, really, it's a roadshow, because we've been doing this for a few years now, but not mega events. We've not done mega events, so this is a start, so please forgive us if we've not done anything to your requirements. But this is an educational program, really, for you, for us really, to discover about Abdullah Quilliam, who he was. Because they tell us Islam came from overseas, from the Indian subcontinent, but we actually tell them, look, it's on your doorstep. A man, white, Englishman, became a Muslim, he brought Islam to the UK. A big piece of history is missing from our syllabus. We don't teach our kids. I didn't know. I grew up, I grew up in the UK. I've lived here for 35 years of my life, and I didn't know about this man until I came to Liverpool. So it's a fascinating thing that our next generation should know about, and the next generation thereafter. Because Abdullah Quilliam, like Brother Momin said, he born in the 19th century, established Islam in the UK, and he had a vision for Islam in the 21st century. And we take Abdullah Quilliam as our role model. We take the Abdullah Quilliam Mosque as a role model for the rest of the UK. And he set the scene, and this is where we are. So my appeal to you is, look, this is not my project, this is not his project, this is everyone's project. This is Islam in Britain, brought to you by Abdullah Quilliam. Let us take it forward. Let us become part of this for the next generation, inshallah. And we'll pass you on to my dear friend and trustee of Abdullah Quilliam. He's a secretary and also one of the co-founders. Farhad Ahmed is our professor. He wears a professor's hat at Preston University. Thank you, Farhad.
Jazakallah. Bismillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Respected brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Very warm welcome to you all. It's wonderful to see so many people supporting this event from all over the country. Grateful thanks to Mujahid Bhai as well for all his support. As Dr. Saab said, I'm currently the secretary. It's a great pleasure actually for me to introduce our speakers tonight, because I've heard, Dr. Muhammad Sadiq Sen I know personally, of course, for a while, but Dr. Shami Mia is someone whose work I've admired for a long time. So it's wonderful to see lots of our members of the Bangladeshi community entering academia. And for those who don't know, Dr. Mia is a senior lecturer at Huddersfield University, an award-winning lecturer, so we should all feel proud of that. He's written 2 publications. The first was Muslim Schooling and the Question of Self-Segregation, and this was nominated for the British Sociological Association's Philip Abrams Memorial Prize, and also received the award of Highly Commended Book by the Society for Educational Studies. So, alhamdulillah, we're delighted to have Dr. Shamim Mia here addressing us on the topic of Abdullah Quilliam and his journey to Islam.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much for the kind words of introduction. I think I have somewhere in the regions of 15 minutes, so I'll time myself, and if anybody can give me a nudge when my time is up, that'll be much appreciated. As it was rightly pointed out, I'm not a historian. I have a training in sociology, but I do have a great interest in Muslim history, and in particular local history as well. And it's with this particular angle that I just want to share with you some of many observations. I want to basically start off by saying that I think it was Marcus Garvey who said, "A people without knowledge of the past history, origin and culture is like a tree without any roots." So in other words, a person without a history, a person without an understanding of their identity and their roots is akin to having a tree without any roots. Now, I just want you to basically just reflect upon that for a moment and think to yourself, really, that when you have ideologically motivated political leaders, the first thing that they do when they're appointed is to change the history curriculum. This was done in India under Narendra Modi, in which he basically put an overt kind of a Hindu understanding of Indian history, taking out any references of Islam and Muslim contribution to that particular historical context, but also more recently in the UK, whereby Michael Gove pushed through a very European understanding of history. So this is a point worthy of reflection, really, because when you come to understanding of history, it's not just past events, but rather events that basically shape our understanding of our present reality. Just to start with you, another a person, I don't necessarily remember who basically said this, but he basically said, history is philosophy through examples. So I guess when we're looking at historical events, it's really, really important for us to kind of have that kind of backdrop, because it's a very important subject matter. And I guess we'll be hearing more about the actual, the great work that's actually being done. So it's not necessarily restoring a heritage, but also a way of remembering our past, so that it can inform our present, so that it can shape our future. So it's really, really important. It's not just a building that's here for debate, but rather something which is really important. Now, the context is also really important, because if you think about it, back in the 1980s, the thing that was really important for people was their ethnic identity. Yeah, either your Pakistani identity or your Bangladeshi identity. And then you have the Rushdie period, and that transformed the way in which people saw themselves. No longer did people see themselves through their ethnic identity, but it was their religious marker that was actually central. And it's within this context that a number of interesting and important books were published. Yeah, the first book I would basically say that was actually published, that was really, really crucial, was actually by Nabil Matar. And the title of the book, and I just want you to pay attention to this, is Islam in Britain 1558 to 1685. Yeah. So when we're talking about history of Muslims in Britain, it's a very, very old experience. Take the second book, and the author of the book is actually here with us. And the title of that book is The Last of the Lascars, Yemeni Muslims in Britain, Muslims in Britain 1836 to 2012. Yeah. And finally, a really important book on this particular subject matter is no other than Ron Jeeves's excellent book titled Life and Times of Abdullah Quilliam, Islam in Victorian Britain. So basically what you have here is a really solid academic research base that basically demonstrates that when it comes to history of Muslims and history of Islam in Britain, it doesn't necessarily start off with post-war migration, with the arrival of Bangladeshi, Indians and Pakistani Muslims. But rather, when it comes to the history of Muslims, it has really, really strong roots. And that has tremendous impact on the way in which we teach history at madrasas, the way in which we teach history at a national curriculum. Now, you'll probably be thinking about, well, enough of that context, let's actually get to the actual point itself. Now, some of the points that I was actually going to cover has already been touched upon by previous presenters, but also this interesting video. So I will able to kind of really skip through some of that. So first, we know that William Quilliam converted to Islam in 1887 at the age of 31, after returning from a visit from Morocco, in which he took the name Abdullah. But also, if you look at really the history behind it, he had a really interest in Islam going all the way back to when he was 17 years old. So, I mean, although he formally declared Shahada at the age of 31, his interest in Islam actually kind of preceded that. I mean, although the historical events is quite kind of really important, but it's not necessarily for him to establish the mosque. But I think I would basically say it's the establishing of a Muslim community, because previously you had a number of significant Muslim converts, but they never established a community. And that's the unique contribution that I would say, one of the many unique contributions of William Abdullah Quilliam. We know that he came from a kind of modest middle-class background. We know that he was a practicing solicitor, but also he was central to the global Muslim stage as well. So, for example, we know that Sultan Abdul Hamid II, the last Ottoman Caliph, actually gave him the official title of Sheikh al-Islam for the British Isles. We also know that the Emir of Afghanistan recognized him as the Sheikh of Muslims in Britain. He was also appointed as the Persian Vice Consul to Liverpool by the Shah. So he wasn't just an imam or a scholar, but he also had international recognition. Yeah? So he was a man of great stature. Now this leads me to a really important question, and the important question is this, is how do we know what we know about William Abdullah Quilliam? So in other words, what's the evidence? Yeah? And I would basically point to a number of references. The first thing is that he was a published author of a number of books. Yeah? So we have a really interesting insight into his understanding, his thought patterns, and his understanding of what Islam is from his own writings. Secondly, he was the editor of The Crescent, which was a weekly record of Muslims in England from 1893 to 1908. Yeah? So The Crescent, Martini, it was a weekly publication, it gives a really good insight into what the nature of that particular community was all about. And we also know that he was the editor of the Islamic World, which is a monthly journal, which was published from 1893 to 1908. So he's a really important figure, because not only is he an alim, but he's also a really interesting contributor to big political debates that was actually taking place at that particular time. regarding the Ottoman Empire and various kind of global kind of political events that was actually happening. So just to recap here, he's a solicitor, he's a trained alim, a Hanafi scholar. He has a really keen interest in zoology, as was rightly pointed out. He used to walk around with a monkey on his shoulder. Yeah, he was took a really avid interest in geology, in stones and various other artifacts. But also he was really interested in local and national politics. So he's a man of great standing. Yeah. So what I would like to do now is just to basically focus on perhaps two areas where I think that Abdullah Quilliam has huge implications in the way in which Muslims in Britain construct our identity and construct our worldview. So if you basically take his Crescent weekly publication, the first thing that you basically get is a really understanding that he's trying to present Islam as a very rational religion. So Islam is rational and is equally compatible with science. So he doesn't necessarily see there's a contradiction between religion and science. So he's really interested in merging those two particular areas together. He was also a really interested poet as well. So in a copy of the Crescent published in 27th of May in 1908, he has an article on ancient Hebrew poetry. Now think about it, he's an alim who has the ability to write about ancient Hebrew poetry. I mean, as I was reading through the article, it just completely lost me altogether. Secondly, he's on the same copy of the Crescent, there is a lecture that's taking part in the same mosque. Now just think about it for a moment. So this is a lecture that's actually taking place in the same mosque, and the title of the lecture is Evolution in Light of Modern Geology. So it gives you really good insight into the type of caliber of the individuals that were coming to worship in the mosque. Yeah. So these are ideas that you tend to associate with a university establishment, whereby people talk about science, evolution, and Hebrew poetry. But here you have these particular high-end conversations taking part in a local masjid. Now, the other thing that was actually attached to the mosque that wasn't actually mentioned in this video is the madrasa system and the schooling system that he had. Now, when you look at the curriculum, the type of curriculum that Abdullah Quilliam basically had, the curriculum that he basically had for his students included the following: French, German, Latin, classics, mathematics, Arabic, Turkish, Persian, law, medicine, logic, and natural science. So once again, you really get a really interesting insight into the type of Muslim identity, or the type of individuals he was trying to basically construct. So it wasn't just a madrasa that taught tajweed, it was a whole inclusive, intellectually grounded curriculum. Now, I just want to basically turn to his book, The Faith of Islam, and in this book he identifies the key tenets of Islam. And out of the 5 key principles of Islam that he basically highlights are belief in the unity of Allah, there's no debate around that, charity and brotherhood among mankind, the outpouring of grateful heart to the giver of all good, and the subjugations of passions. Yeah. So out of the 5 areas that he basically identifies as the principles of Islam, the second point really strikes me, because he's talking about charity and brotherhood among mankind. He's not necessarily talking about charity and brotherhood amongst Muslims. He's basically trying to widen it out and basically say, look, when it comes to Islam, Islam isn't just only for Muslims. It's all inclusive in the same spirit as the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ. So here, I think Quilliam is actually grounded upon theology, in other words, Hanafi, a Sunni Orthodox fiqh, but he also has a really interesting understanding of social religion, and what basically sociologists might actually term as liberation theology. So in other words, your religion has to do something for the poor and the underprivileged. It's not about a set of rituals, but rather you have to connect to the poor and the underprivileged. And in those days, in Liverpool, the big questions were the three evils: gambling, prostitution, and drunkenness. And he basically said, look, as Islam as a religion has the ability to respond to those three particular kind of problems or the social ills of Liverpool. I just would basically want to focus on the first aspect, how Abdullah Quilliam went out and did some really interesting work with the prostitutes. We also know from this video that was actually pointed out that he's actually known as a lawyer of the poor. So in other words, for those people who couldn't actually afford any money, in terms of the prostitutes will actually come to him and he'll actually give pro bono work. So in other words, he'll consult and actually take on the case free of charge. But the other important thing was the children's or the offsprings from those prostitutes. And to respond to those particular needs, he set up what's known as the Medina Home for Children. So in short, in an article published in The Crescent in February 6, 1901, he basically points out that how establishing a care home for the poor, for the illegitimate children of Liverpool, it will have three benefits. The first, it will have a check on infanticide. Second, it will ensure children being cared for and trained under good surroundings. And it's the third point that really blows me away, in which he basically said it will give mothers and children an opportunity to retrieve the character and once more return to the virtue and respectability. So he's basically talking about how you can instill a sense of virtue and responsibility to those people who have been socially marginalised in society. So in short, I would basically say that Quilliam, not only as a historical figure, but also his understanding and approach to Islam has real significant bearings on the way in which we develop and we talk about Muslim identity within the context of the UK. Thank you very much for your time and your patience. Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So I guess I'm a genuine Scouse Muslim then, aren't I? Without the accent. SubhanAllah, I'm really embarrassed tonight. May Allah forgive me, because I have not been involved with your wonderful project. This project for British Muslims, for everybody of heritage in the United Kingdom, that I haven't taken time to really find out about it, even though it was in the periphery of my consciousness. And that's something I'm going to adjust tonight, inshallah, because when I was watching the film, I realized, subhanAllah, my great-grandfather, Mr. Cohen, on my mother's side, was born in West Derby, Liverpool. And my great-grandfather on my father's side was born in Liverpool. And he was Catholic. And their great-granddaughter stands here, subhanAllah, and she's Muslim, Allahu Akbar. And I realized today that I accepted Islam 154 years after the birth of this amazing man. And all of us here owe him a great thanks. Because as our esteemed brother said, this is bricks and mortar, but it's also building communities. Everybody has their favorite project. If you're a football fan, you want to know where the first football was kicked or the first win for Lancashire was, and you want to protect that cricket ground, or you want to protect that football stand even though you can't use it anymore. But this is something really important. I pray to Allah that my great-grandchildren, great-great-great-great-grandchildren will be Muslims here. And that they will be able to go and pray in this mosque. Because it's our heritage, it's proof we were here. And I love the interfaith aspect as well. I mean, I've actually got a copy of the Crescent, by the way. The weekly articles that were put together. And they're so interesting. If you can get them online, I don't know, they must be uploaded somewhere. But they're done in this sort of voice. Today, Mrs. Eva Franklin accepted by the grace of Allah the Shahada. She removed her hat briefly, but we advised her to put it back on because demurity is so important in our faith. And I think, subhanallah, this is Victorian Britain. So I urge all of us with renewed vigour, inshallah ta'ala, to protect this first mosque on one of the rocky outcrops in the far distant lands from Mecca, where Islam, by the grace of Allah, has reached, and to remind ourselves as well, if your great-grandparents were not like mine, brought in Liverpool, why do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought you here? Is it to make money? Is it to buy fast cars? No. Only one reason to take you from lands that were already Muslim: da'wah. Da'wah, to spread the message of the deen. And a wonderful project like this is to keep it alive and present from our history to the future, inshallah ta'ala. This is our heritage. You may think your heritage is somewhere else. That's a big part of you and your history. But your grandchildren's heritage, wallahi, inshallah, it will be here as well. So I pray for all of us to do good and for Allah to accept our deeds and to bless all of the brothers and especially Sheikh Ali.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's a very poor response, isn't it? I said Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See, brothers and sisters, I've come all the way from London. And you don't know how difficult it was to come up here today. You don't know how impossible it was for me to come here today. You don't know how I was very close to saying, I'm really sorry, I can't come here today. Because I have a very different mission in front of me right now. And I was very focused in my mission. Some of you would be happy to hear, some of you may not. But I am standing for the parliamentary seat in London. And in the campaign for election, you have no time. I haven't seen my family properly for 3 weeks. I haven't slept for 3 weeks. I haven't eaten properly for 3 weeks. I haven't rested for 3 weeks because I believe our destiny comes with change. And change can only happen when you wish to make a change. And I'm not one of those who talks about change and doesn't do much about changing. For those of you who know me, you know that I just don't do the talking. I do the walking too. I believe we need to do something about our future. That's the reason why I'm standing in the election. To represent a constituency where I was brought up. But for a better future for tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. For a future that our parents never dreamt of. You see, when my father came to Britain in 1956, he never thought he would live in Britain for so long. He made a promise to his mother that I will go back to Bangladesh after 10 years and never come back to Britain. I would open up a business. I would be happy forever. It's 2017 and he's still in Britain. He didn't go very far. The story of our parents is exactly the same. Our parents came to this country many, many years ago. They came for the reasons of economic prosperity, to take them from the squalor of poverty, abject poverty, living hand to mouth, or not even living at all. They wanted to make a difference, and they worked very hard in making a difference for their families and for themselves. They worked very hard. You know, our parents, they sacrificed more than we can ever imagine. They did not go for the luxury. They lived in one room. I met a gentleman in my campaign trail. I meet people. I met a gentleman who said to me, I used to live with your father. I said to him, tell me more. He said, 6 of us used to share one room. We didn't have a bed. We had a bedding on the floor. We would sleep side by side on the bed. We'd make a rota. We'd cook our food, one person a day. We'd share the food. We'd work 14, 15-hour shifts. We would send all our money back to Bangladesh for our families so that they could no longer, so that they don't have to any longer endure poverty and difficulty. And still they were able to build masajids in this country with their hard-earned cash and their hard-earned money. They have built 2,000 mosques in this country. Brothers and sisters, not one, not two, 2,000 amazing mosques have been built by our parents, by our elders. Not by my generation, but those who came before. And I am indebted to them. And we should be indebted to them. We should make dua for them that Allah give them Firdaus al-A'la if they have passed away. And when they do, Allah give them the best that they deserve. And if they're alive, Allah gives them long life and good health. You see, ladies and gentlemen, who would have thought the history and the turn of history would be like this? In 2017, there would be young or old Bangladeshi men like me standing for a parliamentary seat, competing like my fellow British citizens. Who would have thought our children would become CEOs of companies? Who would have thought our children would be occupying spaces? Who would have thought our children would be making would be influencing the future of this country? Who would have thought that would be possible? Nobody. Our parents never thought that would be possible. They never thought that. My father wanted to go back to Bangladesh after 10 years. He never bought a house for himself because he never thought he would live here. He still doesn't own a house. He lives in London. He's 93, Allah have mercy on him. He's still with us, very old and frail. Make dua for him. Ladies and gentlemen, things have changed. But there's something that we should never forget. Your connection and my connection to this country doesn't come because of you and me. No. Your connection and my connection to this country doesn't come because of the foreigners like you and I and our parents who came to this country. No. Our connection comes because there is a gentleman called Abdullah William Quilliam who built a mosque in this country. A white man, a man of Liverpool, a Liverpudlian man, built a mosque in this country in 1887. Long before our parents came to this country. That's how we are connected to this island. You forget that, you have forgotten your history. You have forgotten your roots. Long time will pass. Thousands of years later, when history is written again, when the world is analyzed by the inhabitants of the world, then they will look back and say, 1887 was the turning point. They won't be saying the building of mosques in East London. They will not be saying the building of mosques in Oldham or Manchester were the turning points. No, these were the tidal waves. The real turning point was when there were no masajids, when there were no mosques in this country. There was one brave, audacious, courageous, far-thinking, visionary, a leader, a scholar called Abdullah William Quilliam, who was able to build a mosque facing the wrath of his local people. Yet he did it. We're standing at the moment with that mosque. You see, when I came across this mosque, I immediately came over and made a video recording for and their own money and their hard-earned cash. They've stayed up nights upon nights fundraising, traveling up and down the country. They have brought this mosque to a level where the mosque needs to become the national heritage of Muslims in Britain, and you need to take ownership of it. You, my brothers and sisters. So we need to build this masjid, complete it. The journey began 2008, right? And we're in 2017, nearly 9 years on. It's a listed building, so it takes work and hard grafting before it's ready. It's okay. Slowly we'll get there. But you have enough community contacts, enough business people, enough friends, enough people in this country who can do this. Did you know, ladies and gentlemen, last Ramadan, in the month of Ramadan, Muslims in this country donated 100 million pounds in the month of Ramadan alone. Did you know that? 100 million pounds came from the smallest community of population of this country. 3% of the population gave 100 million in Ramadan alone. Of course, after Ramadan they gave. We have the money in our communities. We have the rich, the millionaires, the billionaires, and all of the people of business and no business. We have the money. We do. Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, we have. They don't need to go outside begging and running a begging bowl to build Britain's heritage, re-establish it and deliver it to British people as a gift. No, they don't need to do that. We need to take ownership. So I'm going to ask you, brothers and sisters, to rise to the challenge. The challenge tonight is to raise a bit of money. A bit of money for this masjid. A bit of money that will help them complete the wudu area. You don't have a masjid without wudu area. You can't make wudu in a masjid without a place where you can make wudu. You don't have. You can't. I went to a mosque the other day and they said, sorry brother, our wudu space is broken. We are repairing it. I said, what? What am I going to make wudu for? Where am I going to go and make wudu? He said, I'm really sorry. You should have known. Locals knew, so they made wudu in their homes. So I went to a local businessman, I said, can I use your bathroom please? He goes, of course. I used his bathroom, made wudu and came and prayed. Imagine a mosque without wudu space. We're very lucky. We have a country where there's plenty of rain. So water is not a problem. There is no shortage of water. It's just it needs you to start coming together. So I would like to raise money. They need to raise £70,000 to complete the wudu space. Why £70,000? Because it's a listed building. You can't move one brick without permission and approval. You can't move one timber without approval. So it's going to cost £70,000 to build 2 spaces for wudu. Each for brothers, one for brothers and one for sisters. Each of it will have enough space for 10 people to make wudu simultaneously, which is amazing. For a size of this size of a mosque, 10 wudu stations per gender, 10 for men and 10 for women, is more than enough. Included within the wudu space will be the toilet area, the wet area, so that people can use the facilities properly. Our children can come and feel comfortable to be using this for learning for the mosque as a place of learning, as a place of worship, of course, and a place of connection.